I've been married to my husband, Nick, for 4 years. Our relationship has always been one centered around just the two of us. Early on, we made a mutual decision not to have children. It was a choice we both felt secure with, one we never second-guessed. Together, our life has been fulfilling, allowing us the freedom to prioritize our shared experiences and travel. Each year on our wedding anniversary, we plan something special to celebrate our relationship, a tradition we both cherish. This year, our fifth anniversary, I wanted to go big, so I booked a week at an all-inclusive resort we'd been dreaming about visiting. Both of us had been working hard, and this felt like the perfect opportunity to relax and reconnect. When I showed Nick the booking, he seemed genuinely excited, and it only made me look forward to the vacation even more. But life had other plans. My mother, who had been in declining health for years, took a turn for the worse just a few weeks before our trip. Around 15 years ago, she'd been in a serious car accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down, and she had since developed severe respiratory issues and lost much of her upper body strength. Even moving her wheelchair was becoming impossible. It had been years of my dad and me managing her care, with my dad often bearing the burden alone after I left for college. We even hired a full-time caregiver, yet my mom's health continued to deteriorate. The night I got the call from my dad, his voice was filled with a desperation I'd never heard before. Mom had been having terrifying nightmares, and she'd begun telling him she felt she wouldn't have much time left. Hearing this shook me, and I decided right then that I would visit them for a few days, even if it meant delaying our anniversary plans. When I told Nick about my change in plans, I saw his face darken. Nick wasn't very close with his family. His parents favored his sister and rarely made an effort to stay in touch with him. He was an outsider even in his own family, which left him with deep-seated scars that I tried my best to understand. In the beginning, Nick had been supportive, even accompanying me to visit my parents a few times, and my dad treated him like a son. But as time went on, Nick withdrew. Eventually, he stopped coming with me altogether, and he made it clear he wasn't a fan of my frequent visits. Still, this time felt different. I knew my mom needed me, so I packed my bags and left, hoping Nick would understand. When I arrived, I was struck by the drastic change in my mother's appearance. She was frail and looked like a shadow of her former self. My heart ached seeing her like that, but I knew what I had to do. I took on as many responsibilities as I could, cooking for everyone and spending time by her side. Every night, I'd call Nick to keep him updated, hoping he would show some compassion. But whenever I brought up my mom's condition, he'd tell me I was stressing him out and that he wanted to relax. I tried to rationalize his reactions, telling myself he was probably exhausted, but it still hurt. As our anniversary neared, my mom's health took a severe downturn. She was vomiting blood and struggling to sleep. The doctor prescribed medication to help, but it was clear her condition was critical. When Nick called me asking when I'd be coming home to pack for our vacation, I reluctantly told him that I was reconsidering the trip. I explained how scared I was for my mom and how she and my dad really needed me right now. Nick didn't take it well. He accused me of always prioritizing my family over him, and his words hit me hard. I felt guilt creeping in. Maybe I had neglected him. But the thought of leaving my mom in that state filled me with dread. I couldn't bear the idea of something happening to her while I was away. I wanted Nick to understand, to support me, but he wasn't willing. Things escalated when I finally told my mom I might need to leave soon. Her reaction was heartbreaking. She begged me to stay, her voice filled with fear and desperation. Even my dad, who had always been strong, looked deeply concerned. It was clear they both needed me, and I knew then that I couldn't leave them. That night, I broke the news to Nick, telling him that I'd be staying with my parents. I pleaded with him to understand, hoping he would see where I was coming from. Instead, he grew angrier, accusing my mom of being selfish and calling my decision a mistake. When I told him I'd cancel the reservations, he shocked me by saying that he'd still be going without me. Incredulously, I asked if he really planned to go alone, only to learn that he had someone else in mind. He was inviting his coworker, Bella, to take my place. I was stunned. Bella was 7 years younger than Nick and had only known him for a couple of years. I'd seen them interact at work events, sharing inside jokes and easy laughter, but I had never seen her as a threat. She even called herself his work wife once, a harmless nickname, or so I thought. When Nick said he would be taking her, I tried to explain how inappropriate it was, how it felt like a betrayal. But he insisted that he deserved the vacation and needed someone to relax with, especially since I was choosing not to go. His coldness shocked me, and I realized that he wasn't just frustrated. He was punishing me for staying with my mom. True to his word, Nick left for the resort with Bella. During that week, I stayed with my mom, hoping for some comfort, but all I felt was fear and worry. 3 days after Nick left, my worst nightmare came true. My mother passed away in her sleep. The pain of that moment is something I still can't fully describe. My father's cries echoed in my ears, and I collapsed, feeling like my heart had shattered. I tried to call Nick, desperate to hear his voice, to find comfort in my husband. But he didn't answer. I left messages, pleading for him to call me back, explaining the urgency. Nothing. He ignored every call. Days later, during my mom's funeral, I was barely able to function, the grief swallowing me whole. My family and friends surrounded me, offering support, yet I felt entirely alone. As the funeral ended, I found myself lying in my mom's room, paralyzed by sorrow. When I finally had the strength to look at social media, I saw that Nick had posted photos from the vacation. He looked happy, holding cocktails and watching the sunset with Bella, while I mourned the loss of my mother alone. In that moment, the pain turned to clarity. My mother had always taught me to stand tall, to respect myself, and never settle. I knew then that Nick wasn't the man I thought he was, and I couldn't continue living with someone who had so blatantly disrespected me and our marriage. The next day, with a heavy but resolute heart, I drove back to our house, packed my things, and left a note. I wrote, "Enjoy your life with Bella. I'm done." When Nick returned, he found my note and began calling me incessantly. My phone buzzed with message after message, each one filled with apologies. He claimed he hadn't known about my mom's passing and that he'd been caught up in the moment. But his apologies felt hollow. If he'd cared, he would have answered my calls. I knew he was more upset about the backlash he'd received from family and friends than about hurting me. Since then, I've blocked him, moved in with my dad, and begun the process of rebuilding my life. My dad, though grieving himself, has been my rock. He understood my decision and encouraged me to find closure by meeting with Nick one last time. When I finally sat down with Nick, he admitted to an emotional affair with Bella. He claimed they hadn't crossed any physical lines but had grown close over time because he felt neglected. I asked him how he could feel neglected when I'd always prioritized our relationship, done everything I could to make him feel loved. He had no real answer. I knew then that I didn't need any more explanations. Life is too short to stay with someone who would so cruelly disregard my feelings. I'm filing for divorce and starting fresh. I'm heartbroken but free, grateful that my mother's memory has given me the strength to choose myself.